Boom. Welcome to Dear Diaspora. I am so excited to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can't wait to hear more about you and just what you're building. Um, let's get started and just kind of get to know you a bit better. Like, where are you from and where did you grow up?
So I am originally from Cameroon, Central Africa. I was born in Germany and lived in Europe my early years before moving back to Cameroon, where I did most of my schooling, primary school, high school, then started university there. And 3 years into my university program, I moved over to the States to complete my degree in computer science.
Wow, wow, incredible. And what was that transition like for you? Like, growing up mostly in Cameroon and then, coming to the United States, like what was that like?
Actually, it was a pretty seamless transition, and that was thanks to the fact that during my younger years, I would spend the school year in Cameroon, but I would spend the summer always somewhere in Europe, because at the time my dad still lived in Germany, so I would be either in Germany, France, Spain, whatever the summer activity would take us to, and that gave me a good sense of the Western world as a more matured individual. So when I moved over to the States, it wasn't that much of a culture shock, I would say.
Wow. And what would you say were some of the differences, like, your experiences in Europe compared to the US? Were people in Europe maybe more open-minded or more closed-minded? Like, what were some of the differences?
Ooh, so it's hard to say. I will definitely say that while in Europe, I was, kind of like much younger. I didn't experience Europe from a working, kind of like perspective, but generally speaking, um, I would simply say that, like the people in Europe were a little bit more into at least where I was living. There was a little bit more diversity in terms of like different countries and cultures. Um, you know, so which was a little less the case, or it's a little less the case in some parts of the U.S. But other than that, I think. There's nothing that strikes me as a particular difference between at least my experience in Europe and that in the US, because they're not that comparable. I was in two completely different stages of my life. So yeah.
Mhm. Thanks for that. And so, what year did you relocate to the US?
Been in the United States since 2014.
2014. Okay. I asked just because I think over the last, maybe 7-ish years, a lot has shifted as far as how people, think about Africa, like how excited they are about it, how much they know about it. Have you noticed like a difference? Like, when you first, came to the US compared to like now, like have you noticed any major shifts?
Yeah, so definitely the circles that I'm in, a lot of people are now very keen on, investing on the continent. A lot of people are curious about the different startups, the different, happenings on the continent. I think the dialogue has definitely expanded to a broader group of individuals. I think back in 2014, 15, 16, especially the tech scene, or I want us maybe venture capital in the African tech ecosystem was very nascent. But since then, that specific industry has matured, and working in tech for myself, those are the conversations we constantly have. So I would say a shift that I've seen, around specifically, in terms of the conversations we have here, is kind of like the interest around, technology startups on the continent, the interest in investing, and also like even my friends group, people that in the past were not necessarily keen on investing back home, a lot of people are looking to form syndicates, finding ways to invest. So people are forming groups in the investment community. So that's definitely a shift that I've seen. And it's not just only Africans, but also people from other races that are taking interest into Africa.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you for sharing a bit of that. And I guess as you are like a part of a lot of these conversations, you're in a lot of tech spaces and entrepreneurship spaces. How are you navigating your, I guess, your African identity, knowing that there are a lot of people who are essentially, interested in Africa that may not share your identity, like maybe they're non-Black or non-African. Like, how do you navigate your identity in those spaces?
Yeah, I'm always proud African, right? Whenever people ask me where are you from, I say Cameroon very proudly. And like first thing is you have to carry yourself in a proper manner, which means that for a lot of people, you might be the token that represents that specific part of the world. In a lot of cases, you're one or that one African in the room, right? You are that one Black person sometimes in the room. So you kind of represent an entire kind of like race. So you're helping shape the perception of a specific group of individual as to how they see Africans or Black people. So I always carry my identity proudly. I make sure that I excel in whatever I'm doing. I make sure that I present a good image. And whenever I have the opportunity, I try to educate them on certain things, right? There are a lot of curiosities around, like how is Cameroon like? What is Africa like, right? Like debunking, and sometimes like the erroneous thought that Africa is one country. No, tell them it's a continent. It's several different countries that each have their different languages, cultures, right? And kind of like having those conversations, and it's a little bit of a window into the continent for these people. So I try to be a good steward of the culture and of where we come from in every room, and show the right example.
Wow. I mean, I'm sure, a lot of people appreciate you being able to, confidently, share where you're from and, your knowledge of the continent. Um, but how, like, I guess, do you ever get frustrated? Like, have you had any interactions where, someone has just been completely just ignorant about Africa and you've really felt like, oh Lord, like I have to
Yeah, that
over explain
yeah, that
maybe.
happens frequently. No,
Mm.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, no, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that happens frequently. Unfortunately, the narrative around Africa as a continent is biased, is not the most glorious, and it's just now changing. I think there are one thing I'm thankful about the recent years is the rise of Afrobeats, which represents our musical culture, and how that genre has gone viral and is being adopted and listened to by so many people across the world. And it's, for a lot of people, it's their first kind of like foray into Africa's culture, right? So I think, yes, there's still a bunch of situations where people are ignorant about the culture, right? Are ignorant about that place of the world, what that looks like, what people do, the opportunities that exist there. And but like I think a lot of people are starting to learn, and getting more and more curious, because the dialogue is shifting. We have here, for example, in the diaspora, in the US, more and more people, educated Africans that are in important positions, doing a lot of great works, in different walks of life, that are shifting the discourse in a positive direction. And I think it helps shift the perception. But whenever I find myself in these situations, I think I always take an approach of, I rather educate than get frustrated, because then I'm reinforcing the bias versus helping debunk it.
Mm, mm. Wow, I mean, that's a great approach, and probably a more productive one, because I'm sure things could get pretty tense, just depending on who you're interacting with. So, shout out to you for being able to, graciously kind of educate people and, kindly maybe redirect some of their, whatever thoughts that they may have or misconceptions they may have about the continent. So I'm curious to know, so in your travels to the continent, as you've worked to, build Daba from the ground up, what have you kind of learned and observed in the different countries that you've visited across the continent?
Yeah, so I learn every day, constant learner. One of the striking things, you know, traveling different countries is, noticing the singularity of every place, yet still having that common thread. So it's the nuances in the cultures, the nuances in how business is conducted in a specific place, the nuances as to what the business culture might be, how the environment is set up, you know, yet still having those commonalities as African people, so I think I can't talk about like a specific, I don't want to go too deep into the details of like, what I've learned in one country over the other. But, what I can say, generally speaking, is that, every country is different, has a different set of challenges and opportunities. And I've come to appreciate that a little bit better, being able to, set boots on the ground, talk with different stakeholders, meet different people, and kind of like have that experience, in and out of different countries. So, every country is kind of like different, presents a different set of opportunities and challenges. But, like Africa in a whole, and specifically sub-Saharan Africa, has a lot of shared values and common threads that, could be leveraged and built on top of.
Mm, wow. And I guess it would be maybe let's dive into what even inspired you to build your company Daba. Could you share, I guess, first what Daba is, what it seeks to do, and then what really like drove you to like actually launch it?
Yeah, so Daba is full stack investment infrastructure for Africa. In simple terms, what that means is we're developing a one-stop shop that allows retail and institutional investors to find and invest in Africa's best opportunities across both private and public capital markets. So our vision is to allow somebody like yourself to pull up their phone and say, hey, here's I'm Dulwa. Here's my investor profile. Here's what I care about, and here's the risk that I'm willing to take, and here's the return I'm willing to make. What are the opportunities on the African continent that match me as an investor? Up until today, it's been really hard for people across the world, Africans first, to participate and benefit from the economic opportunity that is being presented or that is available on the African continent, primarily because of the lack of access, the lack of knowledge and information, and quite frankly, the lack of technology, the tools to invest on the continent. So DABA is pretty much encapsulating a solution that solves all those problems, giving you access to the best opportunities, giving you knowledge about these opportunities by having investment intelligence, reports, analysis on the platform, what we call pre-trade investment intelligence, and allowing you to then make those investments, grow your portfolio, and track it over time. And
Wow.
I know the follow up was to ask me like what inspired us to start Daba. So happy to share a little story here. So at the peak of the pandemic, when the pandemic was announced and the world was in shambles, I was actually running my first startup. So my first startup was called Boum, and it was pretty much Airbnb for business travel. And I ran it out of Atlanta in the Atlanta metro area. It was very successful. I was running that while, kind of like working at Nasdaq, and then started business school. I was running it while at business school as well. And I had grown that very successfully to $1 million in annual recurring revenue business in under 2.5 years or so. Now comes the pandemic, and obviously one of the most hard hit industries was hospitality and travel. So travel tech companies fell out of favor, and the business dynamics completely shifted. So I went from having my foot on the pedal, all steam ahead. We're growing the business rapidly, had signed massive contracts, to having to slam the brakes, as hard as I could and kind of like go into management mode. And that was actually my first time as a business leader going through a time of crisis, such a profound crisis that, it really made me think about business differently. Like, how do you build resilience into a business from the start? I successfully was able to course correct, manage the business, level it, stabilize it, thanks to, my network and my abilities to steer it and willing to be flexible in times of uncertainty. But that led me to think there are a lot of people out there that might not have the same resources, networks, or ability to just kind of like navigate challenging times or take advantage of the opportunity presented by challenging times. So what did I decide to do? I decided to reach back out to my entrepreneur network on the continent, primarily Ghana and Nigeria. And I just said to these entrepreneurs, COVID has done one of two things for you. It's either accelerated your business or it's actually completely disrupted your business. Either or, if you need a sounding board, somebody that you could exchange ideas with, I'm happy to do it because I've successfully stabilized my business. And I think there are a lot of lessons that a lot of people could take from building resilience, risk mitigation, and all these other things. Started talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs. These meetings got very profound. I reconnected with my now co-founder, which was doing something very similar in Nigeria, working with product managers. And we decided to federate our efforts under one organization that then became Africa Startup Lab. And what we did there, and we still do, is pretty much offering free entrepreneurial support, community, learning, mentorship, advisory to entrepreneurs across the continent. And over a 2-year span, we were able to assist and provide tools to over 800 entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs across 15 African countries. I personally offered close to 200 advisory hours in one single year to African entrepreneurs. And what that taught us was that besides the entrepreneurial support, the capacity building that some of these entrepreneurs needed, the bigger gap was financing. And we had this experience whereby people would always reach out to us and say, hey, if you see any cool startups within your Africa Startup Lab network, please do let us know. But started thinking, all right, there is a need to intermediate the relationship between investors and opportunities, entrepreneurs, right? How can we help capital find opportunities that are deserving to get it? And we dug deeper into the problem and realized that it wasn't only about startups. This problem is actually widespread across the entire African continent and other emerging markets as well, whereby the continent is massively underinvested because there's a lack of access to the best opportunities, there's a lack of knowledge and there's a lack of technology. So we identified those three problems, and that's pretty much how daba was born, to intermediate, capital and opportunities on the continent deserving to access the capital.
Mm. Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing your journey to, launching Daba. I think it's really incredible to hear that you've been doing this work in just different capacities. Essentially, you've been, engaging with different African startups. You've been providing them with, different resources and support. And then through all of those experiences, you identified like, okay, there's this huge gap in financing. How do we help essentially facilitate, investments into these companies? And so I think it's really cool that you have a deep like understanding of the space, and you're not just like some random person that's like, I'm gonna build this new app um, with no like actual knowledge of the ecosystems and the unique challenges and all the nuances that come with like being able to successfully like operate in the space. So I think that's really commendable. And yeah, it's been awesome to watch you build daba over the last maybe couple years now.
It's been a year, yeah.
Okay. Over
And
the
then
last
Africa
year.
Startup Lab before that, yes.
Awesome, awesome. A lot of times we talk about like, oh yeah, I want to invest in Africa or I want to do XYZ. But, up until now, we haven't seen a lot of, I guess, platforms for us to be able to do just that. And so I guess what do you have to say to diasporans who feel as though they're ready to, start really investing in the continent?
Yeah. So first thing is there are real returns to be made, right? There are, with the right information, with the right tools, there is real money to be made on the continent. Tian Tiam, the ex CEO of Credit Suisse, said in one of his recent interviews that when he talks to investors, he often says, if you want to make 10x your money, you can invest it in the US. But if you want to make 100 or 1,000x your money, you should invest it in Africa. So we are from the continent. It is our motherland. So we should be at the forefront of this investing revolution. We should be at the forefront of this economic opportunity. Africa is and will be the center of global prosperity for the next decades. We have the youngest population on earth, the fastest growing economies, right? So there are real opportunities and real returns to be made. So that's my first message. So do not sleep on the opportunity that is presenting itself to you. The second piece is, I would say, take action, right? Now, what DABA does is essentially help you take action, because we understand that, the job of investing is actually it's a cautious activity, right? You don't want to, you want to invest with conviction. You want to invest in what you believe in, right? And you want to invest in what you believe is the best opportunity for yourself, for your family, for your network, for your own, wealth building potential. So that's the problem that we want to solve for the African diaspora, which is we have limited time, limited resources. Let's make sure we maximize those into the best opportunities that exist on the continent. So I would say outside of, obviously DABA is solving this problem, but the thought process is you want to gather enough information to build conviction into what you're in. You want to make sure that when you are indeed investing, you are, there's a simple way of, kind of putting that money to work, seeing it grow, tracking your portfolio and your wealth and the return over time. Because a lot of times what happens is you put your money into something and then you have no gauge of how well is it doing,
Mm.
right? What is that actually yielding over time, right? You can't go in and say, okay, cool, it's been 3 months. Where are we at? It's been 6 months. Where are we at? It's been a year, 2 years, right? So there's a little bit of opacity, so which is what we are looking to solve. So I would say there is opportunity, get involved. And if you're looking for a way to get involved, that's what Daba Finance can do for you.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm interested to know what sort of companies are going to be on Daba or are on Daba at the moment. Like, are there particular industries that Daba is focusing on? Agriculture, fintech, or is it super broad at this moment?
Great question. So Daba offers its users a few things. And it's not all about investing. Some people might not be ready to invest yet and they want to just inform themselves. So you could use the app application, get access to daily news, investor updates about the top 3 things you need to know about investing in Africa in 3 minutes or less. You
Mm.
could get access to investment reports, industry reports, right, across different African countries, all for free, right? Kind of like form that habit of staying informed, getting access to that knowledge so that when you decide to make an investment decision, you are fully confident that, okay, I've read up on agriculture, I've read up on, real estate, I've read up on technology. I want to invest in technology in Kenya. I want to invest in, you know, energy in Zimbabwe, whatever it might be, right? So, like, you have gathered information, enough information to make you confident. So we offer that for free on the application today, right? So that's one thing that we offer our users. The second thing now is, what are the opportunities that exist or are available on the application? So essentially what we're doing today is we're offering venture as an asset class. So what does that mean? Being able to invest in tech startups. That is the first product that is available on the application. Later, in the month of November, we will be releasing November 2022. We'll be releasing or piloting our first publicly listed products. So we have access to the Francophone West African capital markets, regional capital markets, and there are a few very exciting publicly listed securities on on that stock exchange that we're going to offer our users on the Daba app and grant them the ability to start trading on those markets. So those are the 2 investment products that will be available today. Now, for the venture deals or the startup deals, these cut across multiple industries. But the key thing there is that each of these businesses are tech enabled. So these are companies that are building either pure software business or a business that is enabled with software. It could be real estate tech, it could be health tech, insurance tech, agriculture tech. It has a tech component to it, and that is what you find on Daba. Now, it is also very important to note that every investment today that is available on Daba is carefully curated. So we work with high profile investment firms, asset managers, banks, and brokers that are active on the African capital markets, be it in venture investing or on public investing on the public markets, that provide us high grade investment opportunities that they themselves believe and are backing. On the Daba app, also get that curation that they wouldn't get that they wouldn't get elsewhere unless they were, a member of a venture fund or, had a brokerage account with a bank, which those are options that are very expensive to do today, which we are pretty much offering at very, very, very affordable rates. So that is, in terms of like what is on the platform, what users can do today, that is what Daba offers them.
Wow, wow. I mean, has something like this even existed before? Like, I think this is just so, yeah, revolutionary. It's so incredible that people are going to be able to do that. Yeah, has this existed before? Like, are you guys really like the first to kind of?
So daba is first in its approach,
Okay.
first in packaging, really investing on the African capital market as a wealth creation tool and offering a full set of services from the pre-trade intelligence, trade execution to portfolio tracking. We could say Daba is first of its kind, but we're not first in, I would say, the willingness or like making enabling people to invest in something in Africa. There are alternatives
Mhm.
to one specific piece to what we're doing, but there are no full stack investment products in the way that daba is offering them today in the market.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I mean, one-stop shop, you said, right? Like Dava, yeah, is going to be the go-to place to be able to do all of what you just shared. So that's incredible. And yeah, such an awesome thing that you guys are building. Okay. So obviously, Boom, your passion for the continent is evident, and it's so awesome to see, like, a young person especially building something like Daba and, facilitating a way for folks to be able to, really, really invest in the continent. What role would you say other young folks in the diaspora play in like ensuring that the continent is able to continue to grow and thrive? Like, what's our role in the process?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question actually, and I see three main, I think, hats that anybody in the diaspora could kind of like wear. First is that of an ambassador, right? Irrespective of whether you're doing, working, building, investing on the continent, you should be an ambassador for the continent. So in your respective fields, preach the African gospel, preach the fact that the future is Africa and why people should learn about all the positive things that are being done and should get familiar with that part of the world. Be a flag bearer, be an ambassador. That's the first thing I would say anybody in the diaspora should do. The second thing is, if you believe you have a skill that is useful, which I believe everybody here has one, either go and build something for Africa or support builders. So put your skill to work, either building yourself, starting a company, of whatever scale you believe is fit for you, but something that advances, life or makes life better on the continent. So put your skill to work either by, building yourself or by supporting people that are actively building today, founders, other companies, startups. Go and, say, hey, how can I help you, make your company better? Because I believe in your company's mission, in the vision, and I'm passionate about this. And I think that I can add this skill or bring this value to your team. So definitely bringing skill. And last but not least, invest, right? Our money needs to go towards enhancing, the quality of life on the continent, but also we should be financing our own growth, right? Foreign capital is nice. We want it. It's needed. But we should be part of the capital pool, right? We should be part of the capital pool because not only does that mean that we would be an engine of economic growth and we would be part of kind of like fulfilling the prophecy of Africa being at the center of global prosperity, but that also means that we get to have a piece of the cake, right? We get to benefit from that economic opportunity that Africa presents. So to summarize, if you're in the diaspora, you should be an ambassador, you should put your skill to work, and you should put your money to work on the continent.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all three. I think what I've learned over the last couple of years is that there's so many different ways you can contribute. Whether, yeah, through investing, like you said, being a sort of champion just for, the continent in general. And then, putting your skills to work essentially through maybe starting something, supporting people who are building things. I think that's like a solid summary, I would say, and great advice for folks who are eager to essentially contribute to the continent's growth and development. So thank you for that.
And thank you for showing the example. I think platforms like yours are very important to disseminate this positive message and kind of like the nuances around being a member of the diaspora and the opportunities on the continent and what it is, what Africa is, right? So thank you for being a champion.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Boum. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's just incredible to be, in the space and to be able to learn so much, hear from, a lot of really incredible founders like you, and just learn also. So definitely enjoying what I'm doing. Um, and I guess, how are you navigating, you listed the different options and the different ways to contribute to Africa. You've specifically chosen to build something. How are you navigating kind of the challenges that come with like entrepreneurship, building something from the ground up? Like, what's that been like for you?
Well, that's a constant journey. Entrepreneurship is never easy. Rarely is. If you meet an entrepreneur that is kind of like doesn't have any challenges, please introduce me to that person so I could crack the code the way they did. So there are constant challenges, and you have to keep a level head. You have to accept that it is part of the journey. Remain focused yet flexible. That's a quote that I remember from my roommate in business school. When the pandemic started, like, she could see me, how like I was like so engulfed into how am I going to save this company that I've been building for the past 2 years. And she kept saying, stay focused, yet remain flexible. Right. So I think and that is a mindset that I've adopted. You want to remain focused on, your why. Why are you building this? Why are you doing this? Your personal motivations, as well as the common motivations that are pushing you to do what you're doing, yet remaining flexible to the circumstances and situations you find yourself in daily, to adjust and navigate them in the best way possible. So those are some of the, I would say, some of the learnings. But the key word here is, if you're an entrepreneur, be focused on what you want to deliver, yet remain flexible to be able to be nimble and kind of like navigate challenges as they occur, because they will.
Right. Yeah, entrepreneurship is certainly not easy, and definitely appreciate your advice on that. I do remember there was one post or something you posted on Instagram where you kind of talked about some of the pressures, or the pressure that you feel, building something Africa focused or Africa centered. And I think I messaged you because I was like, thank you for sharing this. This is like so real and so vulnerable. And I would love for you maybe to speak a bit to that. Like, how, yeah, just the pressure that you feel. Like, where do you think that comes from?
Yeah. So, whew, man. Um, so first, Africa has unfortunately over the years um, inherited a negative narrative. So when you come up here and you say, "Hey, I am going to build the investment infrastructure for Africa that's going to unlock all the economic opportunity and drive global prosperity on the continent," people are looking at you like, who's this guy? Where's this guy coming from? Like, Africa, why? Like, why should I care about investing in Africa, right? So you're fighting, before even getting to actually build what you're doing, what you want to build, you're fighting all these biases,
Mhm.
right? And they make conversations very heavy and difficult. So they bring a lot of friction to conversation with any kind of stakeholder, investors, potential partners. There is a lot of doubt, right? Like when somebody says, obviously, like when you want to build in the US, like there could be some doubt, but it's mainly around the business. It's not about the geography, right? It's not about like where are you building this, right? So it's like you're starting from a different point and you're trying to make your way up. So there's that. Now, let's say you move past the biases. People have very form for the people that actually kind of like believe in, or like at least see the opportunity on the continent. They have very set kind of like thesis, or I would say school of thought,
Mhm.
right? Now, if you're bringing something novel, if you're bringing something that challenges that, right? Oftentimes, they will try to push you in the direction of that, of that belief. And as a founder, and as as entrepreneurs, again, back to the focus yet flexible. You want to know what to take and what not to take, right? And there are certain key elements that form the essence of your thinking that you should never pretty much lose sight of, right? Because otherwise, you would be, number one, discarding your own identity, but number two, building somebody else's vision, right? So those are some of the challenges, and they all come from bias. But on the day to day, you got to execute, right? You got to execute, prove them wrong, one step at a time, right? And prove that your vision is one that you can move towards and finally achieve by taking step by step. And the funny thing is, everybody is like a ladder, right? Everybody is on a certain kind of like step of the ladder before they feel comfortable, right? Of like, all right, cool. I like, now I can believe in this, right? There are a bunch of people at the bottom of the ladder. You just need to show them, something, that is less challenging, right? To execute, and to be like, all right, cool. I can get on board with that. And they're going to start climbing with you. Others on the much higher step, right? So the amount of effort they need to put in to convince them of, okay, cool, this is the way to go, or is much more involved, right? And unfortunately, because of the historical context that we inherit with respect to Africa, like a lot of people are higher up the ladder. It's kind of like activation energy is much higher, right? So you need to deliver more and more, and it puts a lot of pressure, because again, also there are time constraints on building certain things. You need to catch certain trends. The bunch of elements that go into kind of like building something at a specific time in a specific manner, which kind of like just kind of like add on to the pressure. So that message was just to say, especially to other founders, it's like, hey, remain focused on your vision, and make sure that at the end of the day, you are, building, what your vision is and not somebody else's. And, take what matters from the advice or the opinions of others, and, kind of like stay the course to, because if you do not remain true to your own vision, you more than likely will not have the fuel and the energy to power through the challenges that are going to come in your way. So that was the message in essence.
Mm. Wow. Wow. I mean, yeah, thank you again for sharing that. I think that's a very real thing that you shared. And I think a lot of times we don't get to see the behind the scenes and kind of hear, some of the challenges that come with building, like some sort of like building an Africa focused business. And so I
Mhm.
think your ability to be that open, I think is really inspiring for a lot of people because, you get to see like, the human side of things essentially. And kind of, yeah, we're definitely rooting for you. uh,
Thank you.
yeah, definitely rooting for you and for Daba to continue to grow. And I really, really encourage people to download Daba, sign up, set up your profile, kind of get familiar with the space. And, once you're ready, start like investing. I think the time is now definitely to to invest in Africa, and I don't think people should miss out. Like I definitely don't want to miss out. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And we can provide the link in the show notes as well, so that people can get on board it. And we're actually announcing a very a course, which is so it's going to be a venture investing course that is going to teach people the fundamentals of investing in tech startups in under 7 hours. So pretty much you can come out of our course, which is going to be bite-sized content in less than a day, and feel comfortable investing in technology businesses on the continent. And we're actually making it free for the first initial days for all the users on our application. So definitely jump on that. Afterwards, it will be paid. It will be a nominal amount, but still a paid course, which you'd be able to redeem if you complete the course towards investing on the application. So we're really making it easy for everybody to, again, get the information, the knowledge, and the ability to invest. So definitely, check us out, and definitely give us feedback as well as to how we could make your investment experience better.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll be sure to include all of those links in the show notes. So thank you for making those resources available. And then I guess I would like to wrap up with one final question. We've kind of spoken to it throughout the conversation, but what would you say excites you the most about Africa's future?
Oh, wow. That is it's a deep one, but I'll try to make my answer very simple. What excites me the most is the realization of Africa's true economic potential. What Africa could be once, you know, accessing financial products for all Africans is a commodity. Once accessing healthcare for all Africans is a commodity. Once accessing food, right, is a commodity. When moving across the continent is as simple as it is when, moving across the US, right? So like the realization of Africa's potential is truly what excites me. And there are a lot of initiatives, there are a lot of businesses, companies that are building towards that future. And that is what excites me the most, and which is why I rock this T-shirt. The future is Africa, and the steps we are taking today will allow us to realize that future, which is one of economic prosperity for all Africans.
Mm, wow, that is a great answer. Thank you for that, Boom. Yeah, I think a lot of fellow, Africa or Afro enthusiasts share that same excitement for Africa's future, just because it's like, yeah, just all the things that we've dreamed of, being able to happen on the continent, like seeing people actually build, towards achieving those things, I think is like really incredible. So thank you again, Boom, for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm confident that folks will really learn a lot from you and, really find a lot of value in what Daba has to offer. So thank you again. And how can people connect with you if they want to, yeah, maybe just chat with you, ask you questions?
Yeah. So, number one, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share more. It was a pleasure talking with you as always. And then how can you find me? I'm available on LinkedIn. Boom the third junior on LinkedIn. Just send me a connection request. I'm quite frequent on there. I'm also on Twitter. I am Boom3JR. I am Boom the third junior on Twitter. I'm also available there.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to include those links as well. So thank you, Boom.